The change in the character really took a toll on me, and I didn't agree with it, and I think I was pretty vocal about I didn't like the direction of the character. There came to a point with Shawn Michaels, before I put him in the camel clutch, I took my thumb and Undertaker does the same thing, but the context in which I did it, it symbolized a beheading, which was a horrific and tragic thing that was happening in the Middle East with American citizens.
To be honest with you, at the time, it seemed only natural. I never saw how his character developed and thought, wow, they should not go here at the time. Never, once. To me, it was like, yeah, that makes sense. He's gonna get so much heat for this.
I don't really know exactly whose decision it was to do that. I know it wasn't mine. I think one of the reasons why the character started to change is because they were working up to a program with Batista and The Undertaker, who are not only two giant men, but they're also two giant personas and characters in the WWE.
At some point, they were planning on putting one of the world championships on him. Vince was going to push him to the moon.
The day of the dead man has come and gone.
The angle that we were working with The Undertaker was going to build to a #1 contenders match. And so I was told that the idea was that I would beat The Undertaker, I would be the #1 contender to face Batista, and it would be the Arab defeating the reigning champion Batista in Washington, D.C., kind of like the big F.U. to America. That was the plan that was ran by me. Obviously, it didn't turn out that way. It was Daivari versus The Undertaker. Shawn got the crap kicked out of him.
On the day the episode is set to broadcast, real-world tragedy strikes.
People streaming out of the station covered in blood.
This was a highly sophisticated, coordinated terrorist attack.
The London terrorist bombing that occurred on July 7th that led to many, many casualties broke on a Thursday morning. So you have worldwide focus on this terrorist attack, and SmackDown was set to air later that night with this very controversial angle. So in the immediate aftermath, WWE decides it's going to run as is, and they were going to add a crawl throughout the show, essentially giving a warning to the audience. I think they underestimated the amount of scrutiny it was going to receive.
The realism and the imagery all got tied into what had happened in London. It was Daivari versus The Undertaker, and so Shawn sacrificed himself, and I had just this evil look on my face. Then I dropped to my knees, and I raise my hands and say, praise Allah, and suddenly men come storming out from behind me, hit the ring. I do this, the beheading symbol. And then I come up, I get over The Undertaker, and then I choke him out in a camel clutch.
His eyes roll back to the back of his head.
And now you started really walking that line of just like, is this guy a terrorist at the end of the day?
Terrorists behead people. And they had done it to a journalist, Daniel Pearl, a couple years earlier.
Also, 1 year prior, this American, Nick Byrne, had been kidnapped and then was beheaded on camera by 5 masked men, the same number that WWE incorporated for this angle.
The masked men, they were almost like my soldiers, and I was the leader of this Islamic fundamentalist cult. And then Shawn ended up becoming our martyr.
Look at this, they're holding him up for a sacrifice, like it's a martyr or something.
He's given what had been recognized as a Islamic martyr's funeral, in the sense that the men in masks are carrying him overhead, sacrificing his life for me. That was really the scene that started that controversy.
It was across the line. This was really happening at that moment to Americans and American allies, and people didn't want to see that kind of on their wrestling program.
And so this set off a firestorm of backlash.
UPN wanted nothing to do with this character in light of the controversy.
We had heat with sponsors, with Arab groups. Everybody just said enough's enough. And it was framed in how insensitive the WWE is, using real life tragic situations to sell the story.
I didn't agree with what we were doing at that time. I felt like we needed to scale back. In this particular instance, I told my boss that I think this was the wrong way to go, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was demoted, I was stripped of almost all my responsibilities, all because I spoke up and said that I think this was wrong. As an American, I thought it was wrong. And then what happened was pressure started to come down from the network. And eventually UPN put enough pressure on WWE and they realized that they needed to kill the character altogether.
This could indeed be Muhammad Hassan's last match